Having been actively involved in the toy train and model railroading hobby for some 5 decades, it isn't often that I come across something that I never knew existed. But while browsing an online auction site recently, I saw the MRC Sound Power AC unit. Now, I was fully aware of the regular DC output Sound and Power unit, but AC? Hello again, this is Mike with another episode of Toy Train Tips and Tricks. Let's explore this sound generating throttle and also ways that we can hack it for modern layout use. Ever since Lionel Trains introduced the remote-controlled onboard steam whistle on its trains in 1935, manufacturers have searched for new ways to integrate realistic sound effects into model railroads. From the Mark's diesel roar to American Flyer's choo-choo sound to Lionel's mighty electronic sound of steam, onboard sound effects of various types were added to enhance the model railroad experience. The first high-fidelity onboard sound system was marketed by Pacific Fastmail, or PFM, for use with their brass steam locomotives in the 1970s. With a properly outfitted locomotive, the system could send very realistic synchronized chuffing and even quilling whistle sounds through the track to a speaker in the tender. But the system was expensive, it required specially modified steam locomotives to work effectively, and the sound quality was dependent upon clean track. Lionel raised the bar again in 1990 with the introduction of rail sounds, and a new race to create more and more realistic sounds was on. A less expensive option was sound creation outside the locomotive from a fixed source. Whether from an American Flyer whistling billboard or Lionel's diesel horn shed, or even from an LP playing on the household hi-fi, fixed location sound production provided a sound option for hobbyists on a budget, and that is where this unit fits into the picture. Since 1947, Model Rectifier Corporation, or MRC, has been producing quality electrical products for model railroads, especially power supplies for both DC and AC trains. MRC has also produced a number of sound systems over the years, predominantly off-board sound controllers that could provide locomotive horn, bell, and whistle sounds, and also some additional sound effects from speakers mounted around the layout. In 1993, MRC combined these two products into the Sound and Power DC throttle. What I never knew until recently was that MRC also made a Sound and Power unit for AC trains. I'm assuming that MRC did not make many of these AC units because I don't recall ever seeing any promotional materials for the AC version, and in fact the box uses a photo of the standard DC version. Looking at the unit, the left side is a typical metal-cased MRC power pack of the time. The rotating knob for variable voltage is red instead of the usual black to indicate the AC power output. There is also an on-off switch, a voltage indicator light, a spring-loaded sliding switch to activate traditional Lionel horns and whistles, an overload indicator, and another sliding switch to interrupt power for directional control with Lionel reverse units. The power output of the throttle is comparable to a post-war Lionel 1033 or a modern CW80, plenty of power for a single train. On the right side is the sound generator. There is a switch to select either steam or diesel sounds. A knob controls the chuff rate, or the relative number of diesel throbs or steam chuffs that occur as the track voltage increases. This will change depending on the individual locomotive and how much power it requires to start and accelerate the motor. You can set it to 0 if you don't want any of these sounds at all. The knob at the right controls the total output volume, both for the chuff sounds and the digital whistle or horn sounds. A vertical sliding switch controls the pitch and volume of the horn or whistle sounds. The wiring connections on the back of the unit include 2 posts for variable voltage track output, 2 posts for fixed voltage accessory output, and 2 posts for speaker output. By the way, if your Lionel whistles and horns aren't functioning, reverse the track output wires and it should solve the problem. The original unit also came with a 1-watt, 8-ohm speaker with 20 feet of wire. Let's see how it performs. Let's start with the steam sounds. So as you can see, as I turn the knob, the voltage indicator lights up, and you can see the difference in the lights on the lighted caboose. And you can use the onboard whistle if you so choose. Make sure the switch is set to steam sounds, turn the volume up, and then you will want to adjust your chuff rate. I'm putting it in the middle to get started, but it can be fine-tuned depending on the motor that you're using. As the voltage increases, so does the chuff sound. Use a combination of the throttle and the chuff rate control to fine-tune the sound to your locomotive. For the digital whistle, use the slide switch. You can control the volume and the pitch of the whistle by sliding back and forth. With a little bit of practice, you can make a realistic sounding twiddling whistle sound for your steamer. Now for the diesel sounds. Make sure the switch is turned over to diesel. You can use the onboard horn if you wish. I find with the diesel sounds it's best to turn the chuff rate up higher. The diesel sound has a bit of a whine to it. According to the MRC instructions, they were trying to represent a turbocharger whine on a modern diesel with that sound. Just like with the steam whistle, sliding the switch gives you control over the pitch and volume of the horn. While you may like the sounds themselves and the synchronization with the track voltage, there are some issues with the Sound Power system. First, the included 8-ohm 1-watt speaker is rather anemic in sound. I first experimented with a larger speaker, this 8-ohm 20-watt Radio Shack model that I had lying around. Yes, Radio Shack. That improved the sound timbre a bit, mainly because of the added size of the baffles, and it improved the volume slightly. You can get similar results with the original speaker by trying different mounting arrangements and boxes. The original owner mounted the speaker in an electrical box. I tried this old plastic container and got some interesting results. In the original instructions, MRC included a template for cutting the product box into a sound box. In any case, this may be sufficient volume for an HO or N-scale layout, but with our metal wheels and 10-plate track, the sound of any train soon overpowers any of these speaker arrangements. This is likely the reason that MRC abandoned the Sound Power 027 system. It was simply not loud enough for 10-plate trains. MRC's instructions say that a second 8-ohm speaker may be added for additional volume, which may help some, but I have a different solution. This handy device is a line-level output converter. Often used in automotive audio applications, it converts our speaker output to a line-level output with a stereo RCA jack, allowing us to connect our sound generator to almost any audio amplifier. There are 5 wires, left positive and negative, right positive and negative, and the ground. Since our output here is mono, I connected the 2 positive wires together and the 2 negative wires together, and without the ground wire there's a very loud hum. But I found that attaching the wire to any of the lugs or screws on the unit cabinet will work sufficiently to ground the sound. For testing, I just used a strip of electrical tape to hold it into place. Here is my final arrangement. I mounted the box to the throttle with a small Velcro strip for wire management, and I cleaned things up a little bit. To test the idea, I hooked the throttle up to my home stereo system. and soon the whole house was booming with steam and diesel sounds. I could have serenaded the whole neighborhood if I wished, but I'm a nice neighbor. This setup provides more than enough volume for your train sounds, but it's still sound from a stationary point, and our trains are in motion. So how do we get this sound to our trains? For this, I devised a twist on my previous Bluetooth sound idea. Instead of broadcasting the sounds from my phone, which can be difficult to coordinate the phone and the throttle together, I used this device, a Bluetooth transmitter, to send the signals from my throttle to my train. Instead of plugging the RCA jack from the throttle into the stereo, I attached it to this transmitter, which then sends the signal to my Bluetooth speakers. Oh, and I did say speakers, plural, because I have this new twist on my method as well. A speaker that is small enough to fit into our train necessarily lacks a bit of volume and clarity. But what about two speakers? This new variation of the speaker is the same size as the Moho speaker that I used in my previous video, but these can be paired so that both speakers receive the same signal simultaneously. I can now have twice the volume, and by spreading the speakers apart, it adds a bit of depth to the overall sound. I can put one speaker in the cab of a steamer and the second in a trailing tender or boxcar, or just put them both in a boxcar, or even under the containers on a gondola for either steam or diesel sounds. The speakers will run for about 2 hours at full volume on a full charge. To pair the speakers, turn them both on, and then double tap the power button on both speakers at the same time. After you do this the first time, they will remain linked together. They will then pair with the Bluetooth transmitter as a single device. You can find the links to the line converter, the transmitter, and the speakers in the video description. So now I have synchronized sound for any locomotive of any era, of any manufacturer, at any time, without having to fool around with phone apps or coordinating the phone in one hand and the throttle in the other. I can simply turn on my throttle and transmitter, pair the speakers, and I'm ready to roll. Or you can test the system with a stationary speaker if you're not ready yet for the full Bluetooth experience, or if it's a small display layout where a single speaker would suffice. In any case, this is a great solution to add sound without having to modify every locomotive in your fleet. It may not sound quite as nice as today's digital systems, but it's certainly an improvement over many of the horn and whistle sounds of previous generations. And the whole installation can cost less than a contemporary soundboard. And it's also a great little power supply for my trains. As for the price, after locating my example, I did find a few additional examples of the Sound & Power 027 online. Most were priced in the $150 range, a bit under their original retail price of the 1990s. However, they did not appear to be actually selling at those prices. I suggest contacting a seller and making what you believe to be a reasonable offer. It doesn't hurt to ask. I paid less than $50 for mine, shipping included, but it was a very motivated seller. I got lucky. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and if so, please like it, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell your friends and neighbors. Keep the trains running and the whistles blowing, and we'll catch you next time on Toy Train Tips and Tricks.